Beijing hosted the Humanoid Olympics. Yep, it's the first time it happened. So there were 280 teams from 16 different countries and about 500 robots competing.
It's a glimpse of the future in some ways. I'm excited about the innovation. And anytime there's games, anytime there's money, basically it's an investment because as people compete, they actually fundamentally improve the underlying stack. And then everyone else gets to build on top of it. And also it drives a lot of awareness, right? And so the intersection of robotics and AI is fascinating. And I think it would be such a fundamental shift.
Hello, and welcome to 6040, the only podcast that deep dives Asia's tech and business headlines with the leaders actually driving the change. So I'm excited to be back in studio today with my co-host Prashanth. And we also have our resident analyst, Aleksey Mironenko, dialed in today. Hey, Aleksey.
Hi, guys.
Okay, so we have a very AI and earnings-focused session today, so let's just jump right in. The big headline, I think, of the last week was ChatGPT 5 was launched last week. Some people say it's a leap forward. Some other people gave a lot of criticism, say it's just like a minor upgrade. Prashanth, starting with you, what do you think? Is it fair critiques or just noise?
Yeah, so first of all, it's really good to be back from the summer. And I can hear it in your voice, Maria, like you are truly excited that we're back because I think there's like one octave higher in terms of the pitch. So truly good to be back and back in the studio. Actually, there's, I've done the video thing a couple of times now and it's not the same. It's not the same. Great software and all, but I think it's not the same. So it's always good to be in the room with you. Look, just definitely a bunch of mixed reviews on GPT-5. So let's unpack what's in it first, right? So what ChatGPT or what OpenAI did is took a bold move and said, hey, instead of the user going out there and saying, I want to use this model or that version of model, and there was so many, it's like O3 and O3 Lite and O3 this and O3 that, and I couldn't make sense of like which model do I use for what question I'm asking, right? So that was a user end problem. And the first thing they introduced is like a router, right? So they said, okay, look, you are the user. You should not have to worry about what model runs to do what it needs to do. The router would unpack what you're intending to do. And it'll go ahead and pick the appropriate underlying model or maybe multiple models, and it'll horse race them or challenge them to come up with a response. And I think that's a significant step forward and perhaps hasn't gotten the level of appreciation it should, because I do think having multiple models where you have to kind of pick from the drop down and ask your question was kind of quite annoying, not very user-centric at least. So that was one significant change. And I think as soon as they released it, the router wasn't doing the right thing in the early few hours, and then that got fixed very quickly. If we look at the evolution of these large language models, and yes, they are making fundamental progress, and we've come to expect bigger, better, more performant, more efficient, more out of these models after every release. But maybe that's just an expectation that we've set, right? And I don't think always that these models need to outpace previous models in a significant way to be delivered. I think we should just get used to smaller, more bite-sized, incremental releases and then some big releases along the way. So I do see the criticism, but I don't really think it's warranted because I think in the AI journey that we're on, I think we're in the first 5% of the journey. If I could just digress a little bit, because we do talk a lot about AI, and then I think, Aleksey, would be good to get your views as well. Look, I actually think we have overhyped what AI does, right? And I actually spent a little bit of time the last couple of weeks just thinking about what's happening in AI and why have we come to believe that there's so much intelligence. So actually, at the very core of it, what these large language models can do really well is that they're language fluent, right? So what we are conflating in our own heads is the AI's ability to stitch together very fluent sentences, which is great for back and forth conversation, chatbot, voice bots, great for Q&A, great for summaries, etc. And we're saying that's intelligence. It's actually not intelligence, just that it's like someone just speaking very well, but they don't really fully understand what they're saying, right? We're far from reasoning or true intelligence. And I think we're conflating the what I call the first phase in LLM journeys. I think we are now starting to see, and what I'm more excited about is the second phase, which is the more agentic AI, right? Where you basically say, "Hey, I have a task." You assign that task to an AI agent. That agent then unpacks it, understands to some extent what you're trying to do, and can actually execute it independently, and comes back to you with outcomes rather than kind of next line, right?
Yeah.
So it's not autocomplete. It's actually auto-directed execution in some way. And even that, we've just scratched the surface. And people get so excited that this thing can now go to Amazon and kind of fill my cart with Tide and 5 other things that I need and can check it out. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. We're truly in an agentic world. But no, it's like basic ability to access HTML or HTTP tools with some basic level of intelligence. And that's, I think, the second phase, and we're just started into that. Now, the first phase was great for languages, was great for coding, right? So because, again, a coding language is a language, so the AI was able to demonstrate or flex really quickly, and people thought that now this is going to start writing all the code itself and, do a lot of things. But it doesn't fully reason. It doesn't fully have the ability to have autonomous thinking, so it's not going to be able to do that. In the second phase, it's more agentic. It can collaborate. It can break down tasks, it can disseminate, and then it can aggregate, it can synthesize. It's got some of that. But I think the third phase, and I think we're probably a couple of years out, and sorry for this long rant, but we're a couple of years out from that, is where we truly see multimodal, true understanding, reasoning, planning. And I think even in the second phase, we'll see a lot more memory, where the agent starts to understand what you're saying and remembers what you're saying and kind of can build with you. But in the third phase is where I think we get the digital twin effect, right? Where Maria and Maria.ai are kind of collaborating and working towards certain outcomes. And if that's the high watermark, it doesn't matter what releases come out now, and because we're still in the LLM phase 1 kind of zone, and I think we've got a long way to go, and it's just super exciting that I think we're moving in that direction. So yeah, I actually, while the criticism around what's come out and this model's ability, etc., is fair, I also think it's a little bit overblown. I think we have a long way to go.
So is your sense that if you look at the LLM tech curve, if you will, we're kind of starting to plateau on the LLM tech curve, but you're not sweating it because you're looking forward to the agentic tech curve where we have huge, big jumps to make.
That's it. And I think we're going to talk about the humanoid stuff as well. So AI meeting mechanics, physical manifestation. That's stage 3, right? And in a real way, that's where we're headed, and that's super cool.
Yeah.
So I'm not sweating the micro release. They're probably sweating it because they all have valuations to defend, right? So that's I think where the people are like, oh my God, is this it? Are we done? Was that the big pop? No, I think we have a long way to go.
Even that, Prashanth, is not there are underneath the hood changes that are very important for their valuation. So the way I kind of think of it is, remember how, iPhone 1 to iPhone 2, big upgrade, iPhone 3, big upgrade. Now we're getting incremental stuff. So to your point, we're getting to the incremental stuff much faster on LLMs because we issued so many new ones so much quicker, right? We're in version 5 within year 2, as opposed to iPhone 5 by year 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
But there's an important thing that I think a lot of the consumer side of users of ChatGPT are missing, which is they've gotten rid of a lot of the noise that happened in the previous versions. So from a corporate enterprise usage, yes, it might not be able to reason that much better, but if it hallucinates less, and if it's easier for users to get to the outcome they need, then actually that's a much better result. They've also made it a lot cheaper underneath for people to use it for coding purposes in a way that the previous version of ChatGPT wasn't able to do. So they're gunning aggressively for Anthropic and Claude and some of the other competitors are basically undercutting them to maintain market share. So away from the consumer, this is a pretty big deal, I think.
And the coding front, it is actually better. So if you actually used the latest GPT-5 as a coder, you will actually see noticeable improvement. But yeah, it's not obvious to the general consumer.
Yeah, the people who are worried about their AI boyfriends and girlfriends and reducing AI psychosis.
Yeah, so that's I think another one that was some criticism around or some feedback around that I heard is that ChatGPT 4 was extremely personable, right? It would say, "Oh, Maria, you're the best," and like, "Oh, let me like," and it would get very personal. And I think this one is a little less personal. I don't know what the intention behind that is. I think Sam Altman was saying something about how people were kind of building this codependency with AI, but that's actually perhaps more of a signal on where society is today. And I think we are a little bit more lonely that we're looking for a digital buddy in some ways. And perhaps, and I can see how you can actually get very codependent with a digital buddy, especially if it feeds you in that direction. But I don't know if that's OpenAI's responsibility to kind of rein that back, or if it's us as a society that need to make some changes.
It's pure profit motivation, right? For every thank you and extra nonsensical sentence that was given to OpenAI, because it's so personable, it was costing money, right?
Yeah.
Now,
every please.
it's a little bit less personal. Let's get to the point, get me the outcome. So hopefully, it's actually cheaper for OpenAI to run down the road as well for the basic things.
Yeah, so you're saying it's going to start sounding a lot more like my 13-year-old son pretty soon. You can ask a very long, elaborate question like, yep.
Yeah, that teenager who just says the day was fine.
How's your day? Yeah.
Fine.
Grunts. Does it do grunts? Yeah. That would
get into voice mode.
That would be Elon Musk's Gronk doing, right? Like,
exactly.
Gronk.
All right.
Okay.
I think we've gone off topic.
On a similar note, and in the same world, so then let's go to the Perplexity and Google Chrome offer, because this was also interesting. So, I mean, there are rumors of, I don't think this has been confirmed, but there are rumors of an offer Perplexity made to take over Google Chrome at a $34.5 billion valuation. Perplexity was last valued at $18 billion in their last fundraising round just a month ago. And they also just this past July released their own browser called Comet. So what do we think? What do we think this says about the LLM and the foundational model space? Is it just like a stunt? Are browsers still relevant in the AI and agentic world?
So first off, it's totally just a stunt, because at least they offered to Google, because there's no way Google's letting this thing go for under $100 billion, if not $200 billion.
Get broken up, right? They do have that antitrust.
Except for a court order.
Yeah.
And then it's definitely going to go for way more than $34 billion. But the browser aspect, browsers are absolutely relevant because they still direct traffic, right? There's a reason Google pays Apple to be the default search engine. And from Perplexity's point of view, Perplexity is actually quite different, right? They use a lot of different LLMs to solve the search question better than we currently solve it. So they need as many eyeballs as they can get in order to continue investing and to make it more efficient. So if people switch to their browser, or if they own a browser, that's a massive uptick in eyeballs for their ultimate goal of making money from all of us by making search more efficient.
Yeah.
So it's Comet will grow slowly and steadily from the early adopters. If they could find a browser that has already a couple of 100 million customers, then of course they'd rather own it. Or Chrome, which is 5 billion customers or something like that.
Absolutely.
It's like Google wrote the playbook on this, right? Like Google understands the importance of the browser for distribution of their own products. And so it's funny that, I do feel like they're trying to use Google's own playbook against it, but it's like, no.
Yeah, so I think there's two things going on. So first of all, I think if you launch a browser and you're a nobody in that space, and you come out and say, hey, we're a nobody in the space, but we're going to buy the biggest one, everyone suddenly stops and takes notice and like, wait, they have something too? Whether they're going to do it or not, it's a phenomenal PR play, right? Like everyone's like, oh, now, well, what is this company that's looking to buy Chrome? Oh, they have their own. Like, okay, Comet is now in the picture. That's one, right? And I don't think that was just it, but I think that's the other. That's perhaps one part of it. The second is, look, anyone who owns the gateway to the internet or the gateway to this agentic AI world will ultimately rule the playbook, right? Because I think Perplexity does not build its own foundational models. All they do is become the gateway to everybody else's foundational models, everyone else's agents, and they're becoming the first point of discovery. They're becoming they're the toll booth, right, on the AI super highway. So I think that's a very, very powerful place to be. So I'm not surprised that they did comment. I do agree with Aleksey that I don't think they're going to pick up Chrome for a penny, but it just establishes one fact that there is deep value in owning installed software. So if every morning I wake up and Chrome is where I start my gateway journey into the internet, there's something that Google's learning from that, and there's data. And in this, if we know one thing, data is the ultimate oil in this whole business of AI and agentic AI. So whether they go into the build of a foundational model or not, they need to get access to data. They need to know what people are searching. They need to know what people are saying. They need to have those conversations. They need to build their own memory. And I think that over time becomes extremely powerful. So they will find a way, whether that's through Comet or through Chrome, they'll find a way to get access to that data. They need those interactions on platform.
And this brings us to an interesting question, which we've sort of spoken about in one of our past sessions. If Perplexity is using other people's foundational models to get you the answer you want, are the foundational models a commodity? Do we care which one we use? For specialty tasks, absolutely, right? Because there will be a model that is optimized for coding this type of thing versus that type of thing. But for our everyday usage, which one is the easiest to get to that gets me a good enough answer?
Yeah, exactly.
That will be the value.
But when it comes to Gateway, I'm like the number one company that has all my data, knows everything about me, and is my number one gateway to everything is still here.
Yeah, and
right?
they're asleep, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Perplexity should take that $34 billion instead of giving it to Chrome, give it to Apple to replace Google as the default search engine on our phones.
Well, I mean, Perplexity obviously has been a name that's been thrown around as a potential acquisition target for Apple. So I'm just waiting for Apple to do anything with this. Yeah.
And look, I think I actually think very differently. Like I was describing the three phases of AI, and I think as you go through phase 2 and phase 3, this whole idea of going to a browser, finding a web page, logging in, getting a OTP and punching that in, and kind of like filling your cart, doing a task. I think that'll sound like pre-internet very quickly, right? You'll just tell your agent, hey, can you just order some milk and book that flight ticket and set up this meeting, summarize these notes, boom, 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 boom. And those will get done, right? You're not going to go into the browser era is limited, but there's a parallel that I think will emerge. These are all my random thoughts, by the way. That will be like a workspace, right? So you will actually open your financial workspace, and Aleksey will have this, and he will basically see all the banks. He will have his whatever total assets. He'll have his liabilities. He'll see where things are due, and all he will do is he will just instruct. Right, the workspace. So we will all kind of be like a cursor user, or we will be doing Replit or whatever that. It'll just be a chat, and you will just chat. The gateway or the workspace will move your money. That's just in a financial context. But that same workspace you can move from a financial context to a
family workspace,
family workspace, calendaring. You can go into a work mode workspace where the new Slack will be born there. So I do think how we interact with AI and agents will be fundamentally redefined. And I think our imagination hasn't quite captured it yet. And in this part of the world, I'm not seeing too much of that conversation. And I'm actually hoping that our viewers will go out and start reimagining how that should happen, because I don't think it's HTML. I don't think it's two-factor authentication. I don't think it's simple browser or app-based communication anymore. We're moving into a new world. And I think that's not too far away. So maybe 2-3 years out. And we always get timing wrong, but at best, we're off by a year.
Yeah. So it's your master agent, your digital twin, instructing a bunch of other sub-agents or other LLMs to basically pull together and execute.
Objectives, right? You will satisfy objectives, not actions. Today we're actions driven. We will be objectives driven.
Yeah, goal oriented.
And you really don't care.
And I can't help myself as the resident analyst to talk about the left field impact here. this master agent is going to have access to
Correct.
everything,
Correct.
which means cybersecurity goes from mission critical to the only mission,
Yeah.
right?
So when does
Um,
Aleksey start dropping stock tips on our
Waiting. I tried to follow up on that company from last time, and then he was like, "Yeah, no, that was insider information." And I was like, "Give it to me."
I have one relevant for this topic too, and I
Yeah?
checked if I could say it, and turns out again I can't. So I have to
Wow.
stay silent. But as soon as it's public, I will tell
Yeah.
you this was happening at the time.
cybersecurity? And I think I know.
The other one?
Yeah, maybe I think I have a guess or two.
Oh, okay.
I absolutely. And I think, look, we started trusting the internet, right? And it took some time where there were things that we would never let the internet control for us, right? Or like would never automate for us. But now, if you look at it, we have slowly given up agency
Absolutely.
to the internet over time. I think the same thing will happen with AI. The first 3 times, they're going to come back and say, hey, $320, do you want to make this purchase? Should I go ahead and do it? And you say, okay. And then the 4th time, you'll be like, dude, under 5,000, just don't ask me. It's like, just chill.
The convenience factor will ultimately win, right? Like if your
And
life
that's
is made simpler, you will
absolutely
tolerate.
true. Yeah. And yes, it's going to get it wrong every now and then, but so do bankers, so do we. So we'll kind
I
of
don't know
just
what you're
move
talking about.
past
I
it.
never make mistakes.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, on the internet used to be a privacy thing. I mean, it still is, but I would set up my own login for different websites, and now it's just like, no, sign in with Google, sign in with whatever, like sign in with whatever. I do not want to be managing all these different things, and I totally see it.
Yeah, and one place all your passwords, and you say, hey, hopefully Google will never compromise my passwords, or Apple will never give away my information. So, look, I think that's happening, and at some point we got to come back here and we got to talk a little bit more about all the things that are happening on blockchain. And I think we missed that whole Genius Act part.
We talked about it.
Very surface level. I think
you got excited that the Genius Act was actually genius.
Yeah, that's right. It was marketed really well. I remember saying that. But I think there's a lot more going on. I think we're going to bring that back in the podcast.
Okay. All right. So let's zoom back to Southeast Asia and India, because Q2 earnings are out and they were pretty exciting. So amongst this region in India, C Group, Grab, GoTo, and Paytm all reported earnings recently. They all delivered pretty strong numbers for Q2. I mean, I think people have been talking a lot this year, ourselves included, about like the macro shocks and the environment of uncertainty. But like all the stocks are reflecting quite differently. So since earnings came out, C Group and Paytm were both up around like 20%. Grab is down a bit. GoTo has basically been flat. So it's pretty good news, all things considered. So here's the question, which is, are investors finally rewarding Southeast Asia and India tech companies based off of their profitability? What are your take on the earnings and the reaction so far?
So I take a little bit of issue with the premise in the question.
Okay.
It's not that investors are finally rewarding the profitability. It's that the companies are finally profitable.
delivering to profit. Yeah.
And therefore, investors are absolutely paying attention. I think that for sure is happening. There's been this long-standing question about when these companies will actually monetize their large customer base and networks. But I think the other thing that's happening, and I think it's very underappreciated by people who look at individual stocks, is that if you look at Southeast Asian stocks up until a month ago, up 4% year to date or something like that. China was up 22, Korea was up 40. So what's actually changed? We had the earnings, of course, but the other big thing is that we've had an immense amount of tariff-related uncertainty resolution. India still has a little bit of a cloud over it, but Southeast Asia is done, and most people assume that India too will find its way to the end in some way that's much more palatable than currently. So when you lift that cloud off, above someone's head, and of course you have the dollar weakness for a little while that we've, the dollar weakened 10% through May. That is a very positive thing for emerging markets. So yes, it's individual company specific. These companies have done absolutely, above expectation. And that's why you saw the next day post earnings pops on a number of them. But there's a broader trend here, which is that investors are looking at emerging markets and saying, hey, the headwinds are dissipating, and all these tariffs into the US mean a lot more trade ex-US. And the companies we just mentioned specifically, C, Grab, GoTo, Paytm, they're actually some of the least exposed from a tariff point of view. So the danger for them wasn't tariff specific, it was that the tariffs would hurt the economies, which ultimately hurts these companies. And now that's much less of a risk. So, yeah, challenging the premise of the question, but ultimately, absolutely, investors are happy with the companies and with the potential economic conditions in Southeast Asia and India.
Okay,
Yeah.
touche. I'll take that criticism.
I'll specifically talk about Paytm as the resident India guy here on the call. So look, I think for a long time since IPO, Paytm has taken a few punches. I think year after year, month after month, they've actually been beaten up by the market for various reasons, either regulatory changes, compliance, this, that, whatnot. There's a whole bunch of reasons why Paytm post IPO just hasn't kept up with the listing price. But I think it's really good to see year on year the performance like fundamentally improve, right? So now you're like talking about a profit of $134 million, contribution margins of 60%. You're seeing not just the core payments business do really well, but also the broader financial services business, which is, I think they're not always manufacturing, but they're distributing. That's gone up 100% year on year. And if I look at Q2 of last year, and I have the numbers in front of me, Q2 of last year they were reporting losses. Now they're up in the black. So I think it's really, really good to see that from a loss of 98 million in Q2 last year, they're up. They're now at like 14 million profitability for the quarter. And yeah, I think they're on a good track. I think they'll just have to continue to maintain this. Right, this is the baseline expectation now, and I think this is what will get them to the next curve. So it's really good to see the positive momentum, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of uncertainty around how investors view tariffs and outcomes and local economy, but these are all very local companies, so they're not directly impacted by the tariffs themselves. They're just impacted by overall weakening of the economy. And I think with regards to India, I think that jury is still out for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question of growth versus profitability, right? Like it's these companies all grew up with the story of like we're chasing growth at all costs, and when we need to, we can become profitable, we can cut costs, and we can turn on the monetization lever or pull on that lever, and basically crank it through. And so I think obviously what we saw over the last few years, and then definitely this year with the tariffs and the uncertainty, is that the need, it was time. Like they had to turn on all those levers that they said they had, and they pulled on it and it worked. So I think, Aleksey, the question is like, is the expectation from the market, do you think that that they have to be able to maintain this, and they're going to start sacrificing a bit of that top line growth in order to maintain profitable? So this is just how it's going to be.
It's I think Prashanth said it as well. This is what they're going to have to keep doing because, one thing I didn't mention, if you look at the stock prices of most of these, all four of these companies, 4 years ago, 4 years ago, the price was 3x, 4x today's price. So they finally dropped enough where they can trade on fundamentals. They can trade not just on the meme mania from retail investors, but people can go, hey, good results, stock is cheap, I'm going to buy it. Bad results, stock's a little bit more expensive than I thought, I'm going to sell it. That's what's going to start happening now. They're still going to trade like growth stocks. The Magnificent Seven in the US is a perfect example. The hype started in 2022, actually first started in COVID, then calmed down, then started again after 2022. And as long as earnings are there, these stocks are staying up. But the moment earnings become disappointing, they trend down. We're going to start to see the same here. They'll still be the fastest growing stocks, and investors will want to see that they're the fastest growing. So maybe there will be a willingness to accept flat profits as long as revenue is growing. But seeing the companies go back into losses that are perceived as anything other than temporary, one-off exceptional items type of losses, the market will not, won't tolerate that for too long, I don't think.
Two comments. One is, I think at least in both Grab and Paytm, you still have the founder in the company, right? Running the company. I think that's a pretty fundamental
Secret
kind of
too.
thing.
I'm at Forrest and
So I don't
Yagam.
know C Group as
Oh,
well,
okay,
but,
yeah.
perhaps yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something that they have going for them, right? I think founders are not just thinking short term; they will think long term. They do care about the stock price, but they'll also think about the right investments. For example, right? I do have friends at Grab. I don't know Anthony himself, but I have a lot of friends at Grab. The consistent message is around how to do things better, faster, cheaper, using latest in AI technology, right? And he himself kind of like runs his own little AI analyzers. He runs his own little kind of pilots. And so when the founder is back in the driving seat with hands-on keys, I think what ends up happening is the culture of the company changes. And the culture of a company is like coiling a spring, right? You can coil it, you coil it, and coil it. At any time that you want, you can start uncoiling and you can actually hit any results that you want. So I don't know much about how Paytm is doing this. Maybe overall they're benefiting from the ecosystem. I've not heard a lot about their AI transformation. But in the case of Grab, perhaps just because of proximity, I have heard that they are very, very, very AI focused. And so maybe that's why we're seeing $1,000 rides, but because the AI has taken over a little bit. But I think it's also directionally very much the right thing. We should invite Anthony over. I don't know if he'll come, but I think
We'll give it a shot. So then the other thing that I found interesting, kind of going through the numbers, is how quickly or how much contribution of these overall revenue and profit numbers are coming out of the fintech businesses, and how quickly those fintech businesses are growing as well. So we've talked about it before, but GoTo Financial is making a very serious contribution to GoTo's overall numbers. The Grab financial investments too. Okay, Paytm's a bit different, but then specifically with C Group, like Money, rebranded, used to be C Money, I think, but now Money, has already outpaced Garena as like the second largest contributor when it comes to revenue. So, I mean, okay, in addition to being our resident Indian guy, but also the resident fintech guy, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, across the board, fintechs have found their mojo. I think whether that be, if you look at the IPOs coming up in India, you'll see Kisht, which is another company in lending. You'll see Credit B. We had Amrish from Pine Labs here. I think at some point Payu will come up on the docket. But fintechs have found their mojo. Also, these are nimble businesses. They can and when times get tough, they can buckle down and they can basically just focus. And I think that's what's been happening for the last couple of years. So what we're seeing is actually the post malaise of the 2022 and where they got stuck in these high valuations, and now they're just kind of really digging in. Founders actually working really hard to kind of pull them back out. So one part is just overall banks perhaps going slow and fintechs taking market share, meeting consumer demand. And one part, I think, just that they've just learned their lesson from 2022 and part of 2023 to kind of pick up the game a little bit. So, but great time to be a fintech entrepreneur. And will continue to be, because I think the banks are not going to get to agentic banking anytime soon. And they're running on these old systems. And unfortunately, they have to continue to keep those systems alive, given the sort of constraints that they operate with it. But fintechs don't have those constraints. So they will be the first to embrace some of these new age. And the consumers, mind you, the consumer's mindset has already shifted. Right? We're already thinking, hey, I should just be able to WhatsApp this thing. So movement of money should be a WhatsApp. But the banks will have 45 reasons, 10 committees that'll say why that's a really bad idea. But there will be a founder out there who will say, I can make this happen. I can make it happen safe. I can make it happen quick.
I can be your financial workspace or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or your... So I think that's going to happen. I think in the next 5-6 years, I predict are going to be phenomenal for fintechs.
I agree with all of that. I think the one caveat is it's not an accident that each of these fintech businesses is tied to an established, trusted, non-fintech network effect type business, right? So many people trust Grab on a daily basis. It's a natural extension, since you keep sending money to Grab in order to send money to the drivers, that you might as well keep some money there, right? So many people shop on Shopee and spend money on the games that they might as well use the wallet, right? So it's a natural extension of a trusted brand and a trusted business that's part of your life, that you're willing to give them some of your money in some way, shape, or form. I think for a standalone fintech, that might be a lot more difficult unless it's a killer product, right? So if it's a step change, absolutely. But if it's, one more version of doing something that I can do somewhere else where it's already earned my trust, the hurdle is going to be a lot higher. So it either needs to be massively differentiated features, or just a gigantic marketing budget to get people to move. So these established businesses are monetizing their customer base in a new way. And fintech, of course, as we all know, is quite scalable,
Yeah.
because once
Great
you've
margin.
built the infrastructure, one more customer is very easy. It's not like logistics where you need to keep delivering. There's a cost per transaction. Um, so that's the caveat, I think.
And last time we talked about, IPO markets opening back up. And then I think with this earnings bump, I just feel like hopefully investor confidence is returning to Southeast Asian and Indian tech companies. And we can continue to see this, watch the assembly line properly move forward and start to rejuvenate and get us into that virtual cycle that obviously Silicon Valley and China has been enjoying for many years now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Shall we go to humanoid robots?
Super exciting.
All right.
Exciting.
I'm surprised you didn't
the inner
get
child in me, is just dying to have a go at this.
So in case you missed it, this past weekend, Beijing hosted the Humanoid Olympics. Yep, it's the first time it happened. So there were 280 teams from 16 different countries and about 500 robots competing. So this is on China's long-standing drive to basically develop humanoid robots. Apparently, they've filed over 6,000 robot patent filings in just the last 5 years, and they invested over $1 billion on humanoid robots this last year alone. And then I was trying to figure out who actually won the games, and it feels like Unitree seemed to have the best robots out there, which, yeah. Anyways, so Prashanth, unleash your inner child on us. What gets you so excited about this?
No, I think, look, it's a glimpse of the future in some ways, right? I actually am not that excited about watching robots play soccer, but I am actually very excited about what robots can do in kind of making human lives better, right? So there's still, till date, we do put a lot of underprivileged people around the world at harm's way to meet various needs, right? So whether that be mining, whether that be, whether that be disarming bombs, there's a lot of areas where humans have no business being, right? So, but I think those businesses fundamentally do move economies. We need those businesses to be alive. I'm not the one who say, hey, we should have no mining, right? But I think sophisticated humanoids, or ultimately just full droids, actually should be able to do those tasks, should be able to do it better, should be able to do it cheaper, should be able to do it in a way that's far from where it impacts humans. So I'm actually excited from that front. I'm excited about the innovation. And anytime there's games, anytime there's money, basically it's an investment, because as people compete, they actually fundamentally improve the underlying stack. And then everyone else gets to build on top of it. And also it drives a lot of awareness, right? And so the intersection of robotics and AI is fascinating. And I think it would be such a fundamental shift, similar to, I think, electricity or refrigeration, or air conditioning, or something as basic as that. So I think it's a frontier. So to see these games come to life kind of gives me some hope that as they continue, we'll see a lot more innovation. Watching 5 robots kind of fight for a ball, fall over each other clumsily, not be able to get up, have human interference to kind of pick up these. That's
whatever, yeah,
funny as hell to watch. But but it's not the blooper video that I was in for the Olympics. I'm just more interested on what comes next.
If you recall, 20 years ago, there were competitions for who can make an electric car go 200 meters.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it became 500, then it became 5,000, and then, a South African dude figured it all out. It's the same thing. this is the way to, as Prashant said, turbocharge innovation. People don't watch sports for the actual sport, right? They watch it for the human drama attached to sports. So I don't think this will ever replace, the Olympics.
I don't know. Just wait for that Netflix series
Oh, I was going to say,
covering the
well,
4 different robot teams.
well, the natural parallels are, F1 Drive to Survive, right? It's all about the innovation in the car, but no one watches because of the car innovation. People are watching to see which person melts down, and what the human interactions are between the drivers and the engineers and so on. So maybe we get to that phase of it one day. There's a team maintaining robots, and they're all fighting, and we want to watch that. But there's no question, and I think, again, I don't recall if we discussed this a couple of sessions ago, but China owns the hardware
Mm-hmm.
for robotics. The U.S. is trying to catch up, but currently owns the software for robotics. And the two are going at the same problem from different directions. The US doesn't want to be dependent on China for hardware, so they're trying to sort out their own. China doesn't want to be dependent on the US for software, so they're putting on these competitions to encourage people to write domestic software. It's great to see. And both will win in their respective spheres of geopolitical influence.
Yeah. I mean, that is what I felt like when I read the numbers about the number of patent filings and everything.
Yeah.
Is just like China's taking this so seriously. And I
Yeah.
feel like the rest of the world is just not taking the actual robotics aspect of AI quite as seriously. And the leading companies, yes, are all from China at this point. So, I mean, do y'all think that there's still a chance for, other companies to catch up? I mean, we're still in the very early innings. And if somebody buckled down, like they would be able to unlock this as well?
Yeah, look, I think at the heart of it, a robot is a manipulator arm. It has the ability to move. It has the ability to sense. It has, and so basically just a few basics, right? It's able to. It's a very mechanical
Mm-hmm.
piece of whatever hardware, and I still think it's the software that drives it, that allows it to plan, that allows it to distribute, that allows it to coordinate. That's where the real intelligence is, right? Soccer is not just about legs going up and down and kicking a ball. It's about how the brain actually,
the image processing, the like reaction,
Exactly.
the routing,
There's so much going on, and I think that element is still like why I think it's a fascinating sport, and I think that is still software. So I don't think by owning the hardware you win the game.
Right.
You got to own the hardware, but you've got to win the software as well. And I think that software race is pretty much well balanced out of China. So I think, so I think there's a good chance that different people can come at this different ways and win.
And then if you think about the other big hardware race, it's obviously in semiconductors and chips, right? But robots are a lot easier to build.
Yeah.
Physically than semicons. So, yeah.
Actually, I think China is also coming at this not just to demonstrate superiority in hardware. They also need to do this because I think they're going to have a labor problem. And if they're the manufacturing center of the world and want to continue to be efficient manufacturers, they need to effectively be able to replicate at scale these little manufacturing units, robots. And the good thing for the world is, look, it would have been impossible to move 1 million Chinese people anywhere else. But you could take 1 million Chinese robots and you could put them in the UAE and you could set up a manufacturing plant for a certain line processing, right? So I think that's also kind of exciting because the geopolitics don't affect kind of like
quite as much
the manufacturing quite as much. So now you can actually build manufacturing centers in different parts of the world. Yes, ultimately, who made the robot is less interesting. As long as those robots can be moved, and I think they can be because they don't really need visas.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to very quickly for our audience to put a couple of numbers on this comment that Prashant just made. So, China is 1.4 billion people today. The U.S. is 350 million people. In 75 years, 2100, China will be 750 million people, almost half of what it is today. The US, however, will go from 350 to 330. because of immigration and because of birth rates. Now, of course, China's immigration policies might change and more people might want to move to China, but all else equal, if current trends continue, that's the issue. So for China to remain the world's factory, it needs to have non-human workers. So I agree completely. They absolutely have to do this. And they're throwing money at it the way they did EVs. And we know how that worked out. But there's one, again, I always think about what's the caveat, what's the risk? And the risk is how many companies did you say there were? How many participants? 280?
Yeah.
There were 280 teams, yeah.
Yeah, 280 teams. I guarantee you 250 of them won't exist in 5 years because the competition is going to be so cutthroat from all this money. They're all going to be competing on cost and success, and half of them will go bankrupt because they won't be able to continue. They'll never reach a revenue line item because it'll be just too cheap. The successful ones will be too cheap for the mediocre ones to catch up.
But I mean, that's the way China invests, right? Like this is what they
Yes.
did in solar panels, is what they did in EVs. It's like Hunger Games, it's like capitalism Hunger Games, where you just like have a batch and you compete and you compete and you compete until you have like the best winners that can actually win at a global scale.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking that when you were talking about automation, obviously there's something called lights out automation where everything's completely remote and you can turn the lights off.
No
right?
HVAC.
Yeah. No HVAC. Yeah. And then but when I was working in Apple's supply chain team and we were assessing vendors and new suppliers, they'd be like, oh, we have lights out automation. And we'd walk into a dark room with people sitting on the assembly line with a headlamp or like a flashlight. And it was lights off automation in that like half of the line would be automated and the lights were off.
But that's another great example of like my opening statement, right? It's an example of like, that's not what humans are built for, right? We have such a big brain. So if you say, hey, use
and
like,
very nimble fingers.
Yeah, very nimble fingers. So, but I think to say that your fingers trump your brain is an insult to the human race, right? Yes. So I think in some ways I'm glad to see this happening. And I think those humans can do more productive things and more valuable things in life. And hopefully, but I think the more salient point is I think it's hard to export Chinese people. Right. It's very easy to export Chinese robots. So I hopefully, and then you can set up manufacturing facilities anywhere in the world because there's a best-in-class iPhone assemblers or a best-in-class whatever comes off a line.
Yeah.
Prashanth, the counterpoint to that though is it's also pretty cheap and not much more expensive to export a German robot or an American robot. Right now, China's manufacturing capacity is unique in its ongoing cost and capacity.
Yeah.
But if it's robot to robot, it'll be pretty equal.
Yeah, over time.
Yeah. So it'll just come down to
features. I mean, like everything else.
But let's also unpack this, right? A little bit. Let's take the EV market. So if that were 100% true, then the BYD and the BMW should cost the same. The electrics.
Well, once they're made by robots, they will. Today, they're made by a bunch of German people at high salaries and a bunch of Chinese people at low salaries.
I see what you're saying.
So
okay.
I don't know how much of it, and look, none of us are car manufacturing experts, right? I don't know how much of the price difference is
human
profit
labor
motivation versus the
or
unit
brand,
right?
Yeah.
Brand,
or the leverage of the brand or what have you.
Yeah.
So
I think it totally changes the geopolitical landscape, right? Because it won't be about Western world innovates, China builds. Clearly China is innovating, but now in theory, in 5-10 years, anyone can build as long as they can get their hands on robots. And I'm sure there will be a couple of winners from the US, a couple of winners from Europe, a couple of winners from China, and maybe a few other countries.
Yeah.
And you were in this US in the summer as well. There's this huge debate around the immigration, the ICE and everything else. And a lot of that is like, hey, undocumented workers. And a lot of these undocumented workers are doing jobs that no one wants to do, right? Yeah. They're in the farms, they're picking, they're cleaning up the streets, they're like in meat packing, etc. So if you don't want the undocumented workers and the related kind of like backlash, whatnot, and you want to progress as a society, then I think one of the ways is to kind of like invest very deeply in robotics. And that's your answer out. So I think that's kind of the direction we're going in, because I think when you have human workers, then there's social security fabric, and there's medical costs, and there's societal costs that come with it. And maybe some of these countries are not willing to kind of bear that anymore.
I mean, to that extent, I'm actually surprised Japan's not all over this, because, I mean, if you want to talk about like that population crisis, I mean, Japan's been living it and is still living it.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Would you, assuming that everybody else is a few years behind, would you personally buy a Chinese humanoid robot for your home? The first one that, like the first, whatever, set or series that kind of comes off the line?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Aleksey?
So my gut answer was yes, why not? But then it occurs to me that I'm the guy who took time at wife's orders to find non-microphone smart speakers for the house, because we were worried about who can listen to what in the house and how it'll interact with the kids. So again, we come back to the amount of comfort we get. As long as no one can hack it, coming back to that earlier point. Same thing, by the way, for robots in the farms, right? Because once the robots are hacked, that's it, no more food supply. At some point, the trust factor will be there. But I could care less if it's Chinese, German, or American. What's the best one that is unhackable and can be trusted to do the job around humans that I care about?
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like if the US is in an uproar over TikTok, which is, you know, a social media app, the idea of having Chinese-made humanoid robots in your home, I just feel like there will be some privacy issues around.
Yeah. But there's 4 billion other people who aren't Western aligned, who won't have that problem.
I mean, it depends on affordability. Okay. Any other last thoughts on this?
You've got me thinking.
What? Now you're worried about that Chinese humanoid robot?
Like, what's in the house?
I mean, listen. My dad brings a lot of toys for my kids from China, and they have.
You take out all the batteries.
Toys, well, part of the toys is that it records, like, there's like this weird jiggly pig thing, and it jiggles and it rolls around. The kids are supposed to chase it, but it literally records ambient, whatever noise from around and repeats it back to you in like this weird garbled voice, and that's part of the fun. But it's kind of creepy. And then you're like, if this was an IoT hooked up to whoever, it does. I mean, yeah, I would buy the humanoid robot that Apple produces. I'll just put it out there.
All right, so one customer for the Western robot world, and maybe
well,
two
don't worry. I
customers
think
for the cheapest one we can get.
Apple cannot figure out their AI situation. I feel like we're like 100 years away from that.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a wrap from humanoid robots to ChatGPT 5 to earnings. There's been a lot to digest. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time.